Welcome to Globewise Entertainment, the channel where forgotten films, Hollywood secrets, and cinematic controversies come back to life. Today we're diving deep into the shadows of Tinseltown with 10 banned films that almost destroyed old Hollywood. These are the movies so bold, so scandalous, and so dangerous they didn't just break the rules, they nearly tore the system apart. From religious outrage to political censorship, these banned classics left Hollywood shaken to its core. If you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, now's the perfect time. We uncover the stories they tried to bury. Which of these films shocked you the most? Tell us in the comments, and let's explore the truth behind the silver screen together. 1. Babyface, 1933. The film that forced Hollywood to clean up its act. In the gritty heart of the Great Depression, when America was desperate for hope, Warner Brothers released a film so scandalous it nearly blew the lid off Hollywood. Babyface, 1933. The story followed Lily Powers, played by the electrifying Barbara Stanwyck, a poor young woman raised in a speakeasy who's been used and abused by men her entire life. Tired of being a victim, she flips the script. Lily decides to climb the corporate ladder in New York City by seducing one powerful man after another. And she does it unapologetically. With every floor she ascends, the stakes and the men get bigger. But Babyface didn't just hint at sex. It showed the cold, calculated manipulation that made censors squirm. In one version of the film, her mentor even quotes Nietzsche to justify using men for power. When audiences saw the original cut, the backlash was immediate. Church groups were outraged. Politicians fumed. Censors in multiple states demanded cuts or banned it outright. The film was so provocative that it helped trigger the strict enforcement of the Hays Code in 1934, the infamous set of moral guidelines that would dictate Hollywood content for decades. Warner Brothers was forced to recut the film, toning down Lily's ambition and giving her a redemptive ending. But the original version was thought lost, until it was discovered in a Library of Congress vault decades later. Today, Babyface is hailed as a feminist classic, a daring tale of survival in a man's world. But in 1933, it was almost the movie that shut Hollywood down. 2. The Outlaw, 1943. The bra that broke Hollywood. In the heart of 1940s Hollywood, a world of glitz, glamour, and strict moral codes, one man dared to challenge it all. Billionaire playboy and aviation tycoon Howard Hughes. He wasn't just building planes anymore. He was about to build a scandal. Hughes had cast the stunning Jane Russell, a newcomer with smoldering eyes and curves that would redefine Hollywood sensuality. The film? The Outlaw, a western but not like any before. This wasn't about cowboys and shootouts. It was about sex, suggestion, rebellion. Hughes obsessed over Jane's appearance. So much so, he engineered a custom-designed bra, using aircraft engineering, to lift her cleavage higher than the production code dared allow. When censors saw the footage, they were horrified. Jane's revealing shots pushed boundaries the Hays office couldn't accept. The film was banned, pulled from distribution, and condemned by the Catholic Legion of Decency. But Hughes was no ordinary producer. He launched a fake protest campaign, hiring women to act outraged and picket theaters, knowing the controversy would spark curiosity. And it worked. The Outlaw eventually premiered in small bursts across the U.S., often pulled and reinstated, banned and unbanned. But its sensual publicity stills. Russell reclining in hay, eyes smoldering, lit a firestorm. Churches condemned it. Politicians raged. And Hollywood panicked. The studio system feared a collapse of the fragile truce they had with moral watchdogs. If The Outlaw succeeded, the Hays Code would lose its grip. Though it took 5 years for a full release, Hughes had made his point. The Outlaw hadn't just bent the rules, it exposed their limits. And Jane Russell? She became a star. Not just for her beauty, but for being the woman who nearly brought the House of Hollywood crashing down. 3. Ecstasy, 1933. The Scandal of Ecstasy, 1933. The film that shocked the world. In 1933, a silent storm rolled out of Czechoslovakia, one that would shake the foundations of old Hollywood before it even set foot on American soil. The film was called Ecstasy, It starred a young luminous actress named Hedy Kiesler, who the world would later know as Hedy Lamarr, Hollywood star and brilliant inventor. But at the time she was only 18, and her performance in this European art film would become the most talked about and most banned of the decade. In the film, Hedy appears nude in a lakeside skinny dipping scene, something unheard of at the time. But that wasn't what rattled the world the most. In one now legendary scene, her character experiences sexual pleasure on screen, shown only through her face in a close-up. It was the first female orgasm ever depicted in mainstream cinema, and that quiet moment exploded like dynamite across the globe. Governments banned the film left and right. The Vatican condemned it. U.S. censors refused to let it screen. Moral watchdogs called it filth, and critics labeled it immoral art. Even Hollywood studios distanced themselves, afraid of what this foreign film might mean for their own image. And yet, audiences were intrigued. The controversy made Ecstasy legendary. Hedy Lamarr, despite being blacklisted for a time in American circles, was eventually brought to Hollywood, where MGM marketed her as the most beautiful woman in the world, carefully burying her scandalous past. But Ecstasy never faded from memory. It became a symbol of freedom versus censorship, art versus morality, and the price a woman pays for power in cinema. A single close-up of pleasure nearly tore down the boundaries of what film could show, and for old Hollywood, it was a moment they could never fully erase. 4. Freaks, 1932. The film that ended a director's career. In 1932, legendary director Todd Browning, fresh off the success of Dracula, took a bold leap into cinematic infamy. He released Freaks, a chilling tale set in a traveling circus, featuring real-life sideshow performers with physical deformities. Far from being monsters, the freaks in Browning's story were the victims, betrayed by the so-called normal people around them. Audiences weren't ready. At test screenings, people fainted. One woman reportedly sued the studio after claiming the film caused her to miscarry. MGM panicked. The studio cut over 30 minutes from the film, trying desperately to salvage its reputation. But the damage was done. Critics called it disgusting, grotesque, and exploitative. Censors across the US, the UK, and Canada banned it outright. The fallout was so severe that Todd Browning, once a Hollywood golden boy, was blacklisted. His career never recovered. But decades later, Freaks found redemption. It was reappraised as a misunderstood masterpiece, even earning cult status for its daring social commentary and bold humanity. Still, in 1932, Freaks was the film that almost destroyed a director and nearly shattered old Hollywood. 5. Scarface, 1932. The gangster film that threatened to kill the studio system. In the early 1930s, America was still clawing its way out of the Great Depression. Gritty crime headlines sold newspapers, and the public had a strange fascination with gangsters. So when director Howard Hawks teamed up with eccentric producer Howard Hughes to bring a bold, blood-soaked gangster tale to the big screen, they didn't hold back. That film was Scarface, 1932, a brutal, bullet-riddled portrait of a ruthless mobster named Tony Camonte, modeled loosely after the infamous Al Capone. From the opening scenes, the film was unlike anything audiences had seen. Machine gun violence, cold-blooded murders, and a chilling look into the psychology of organized crime. Paul Muni's performance as the power-hungry Tony was electric, raw, unfiltered, and terrifying. But it wasn't just the violence that caused a stir. Scarface flirted with taboo territory, incestuous undertones between Tony and his sister, the glorification of criminal lifestyle, and a total disregard for moral authority. Critics and censors were horrified. The Production Code Administration demanded massive changes. Censors wanted the ending rewritten, scenes reshot, and even the title changed. Hughes, always defiant, refused to bow. He shelved the film for months, then released it anyway, in some states without approval. Cities like Chicago and New York banned the movie. Religious groups protested outside theaters. Politicians declared it an outrage to American decency. But none of that stopped audiences from packing the theaters. Scarface didn't just shake old Hollywood, it exposed how weak the censorship system really was. The chaos surrounding the film forced studios to adopt stricter moral guidelines, leading directly to the enforcement of the Hays Code in 1934. Ironically, Scarface became the very reason Hollywood tightened the leash on itself. And Howard Hughes, he walked away with a smirk, and a legend that lived on. 6. Morocco 1930. The kiss that rocked Hollywood. When Morocco hit theaters in 1930, audiences were stunned. Not because it was a wartime romance or a vehicle for rising stars, but because of one kiss that would become one of the most controversial moments in early Hollywood history. Marlene Dietrich, dressed in a tailored tuxedo, walked onto the stage of a smoky nightclub. Her character, a sultry cabaret singer, oozed confidence and mystery. But what happened next shocked the nation. She kissed a woman on the lips on screen. At a time when homosexuality was taboo, and the Hays Code was tightening its grip on Hollywood, this single moment sent shockwaves through the industry. Religious groups condemned the film. Censors in cities like Boston, Chicago, and even London banned or heavily edited the scene. It was seen as immoral, indecent, and even dangerous. But for Marlene Dietrich, it was iconic. That kiss not only cemented her image as a daring, gender-defying star, it also challenged the very foundation of what was allowed in American cinema. Paramount faced backlash, boycotts, and near blacklisting. Yet despite it all, Morocco earned 4 Academy Award nominations, proving that art could still thrive, even in the face of censorship. 7. The Miracle 1950. The film that defied God and the Supreme Court. In the post-war glow of 1950s America, where morality wore a smile and Hollywood wore a halo, a quiet storm was brewing. It wasn't loud. It didn't explode like a gangster's Tommy gun or tempt like a sultry noir dame. No. This time the danger came wrapped in religion. And it was called The Miracle. An Italian short film directed by Roberto Rossellini, The Miracle told the story of a simple, mentally challenged woman who believes she has been visited by Saint Joseph, only to find herself pregnant. In her eyes it was a divine conception, but to the villagers, she was mad. A blasphemous fool. And to the Catholic Church, it was an unforgivable insult to God. When The Miracle was screened in New York as part of a 2-part anthology called Ways of Love, the backlash was swift and furious. Religious leaders called it sacrilegious, filthy, and a direct attack on Christianity. Catholic groups protested. Politicians demanded censorship. And then came the hammer. The New York State Board of Regents revoked the film's license. The Miracle was officially banned. The reason? It was obscene and sacrilegious. A film about faith had become a weapon in a war over freedom of speech. But one man refused to back down. Joseph Burstyn, the film's distributor. He sued the state, and suddenly, a short Italian film with no Hollywood stars was at the center of a landmark Supreme Court battle. In 1952, the case reached its climax in Burstyn versus Wilson. The question: could the government ban a film just because it was deemed offensive to religion? The verdict shocked the nation. And no. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of The Miracle, declaring that motion pictures are protected under the First Amendment. For the first time in U.S. history, movies had free speech. Old Hollywood, which had bowed for decades to the Hays Code and religious censors, was forever changed. This wasn't just about a film anymore, it was about freedom. The Miracle was no longer banned. But its real miracle? It saved Hollywood from the grip of silence, and gave artists the voice to challenge everything. 8. The Moon is Blue 1953. The film that dared to say virgin, and nearly broke Hollywood's rules. In 1953, a quiet revolution unfolded on the silver screen. The Moon is Blue, a romantic comedy directed by the legendary Otto Preminger, had no nudity, no sex scenes, and no profanity. So why did it cause a censorship earthquake? Because it dared to say words like virgin, seduce, and pregnant. Yes, that was all it took to scandalize America. The Production Code Administration, Hollywood's strict moral watchdog, refused to give it the seal of approval. But instead of backing down, Preminger and United Artists did the unthinkable. They released it anyway. The backlash was swift. The film was banned in Kansas, Maryland, and even Jersey City. Catholic groups called for boycotts. Moral guardians accused it of poisoning young minds. But audiences? They were curious and packed theaters across the country. The film became a surprise box office hit. In the end, The Moon is Blue didn't destroy Hollywood. It helped save it. It proved that the public was ready for grown-up conversations on screen, and that the Hays Code's days were numbered. This modest little rom-com did what big-budget epics couldn't: crack the code wide open. 9. Island of Lost Souls, 1932. The film too disturbing for civilization. In 1932, Hollywood released a film so grotesque, so unnerving, that it didn't just shock audiences, it terrified governments. Island of Lost Souls, based on H.G. Wells' The Island of Dr. Moreau, told the tale of a mad scientist who performs horrifying experiments to turn animals into humans. On screen, deformed hybrids moaned in agony. Their faces, stitched with makeup and madness, seemed to crawl out of a waking nightmare. Charles Laughton, as Dr. Moreau, played God in the most unholy ways, whipping, mutating, and mocking the laws of nature. Audiences weren't ready. Churches denounced it. Censors trembled. The UK banned it outright for over 25 years, calling it against nature and decency. Several US states followed, horrified by the film's sadism and blasphemous tone. Even H.G. Wells himself disowned the film, horrified at how far it went. Hollywood was stunned. If art could be banned for being too disturbing, what would be next? Island of Lost Souls became a legend of fear, proof that cinema could push too far too fast. And for decades it was lost, just like the souls it tried to bring to life. 10. The Sign of the Cross, 1932. The film that outraged the church. In 1932, legendary director Cecil B. DeMille thought he was creating a grand biblical epic. What he actually delivered was one of the most scandalous films of early Hollywood, one that would leave moral crusaders in a frenzy and push the film industry to the brink of collapse. Set in ancient Rome during Emperor Nero's persecution of Christians, The Sign of the Cross was meant to be a tale of spiritual triumph. But DeMille, never one to shy away from spectacle, laced the film with barely veiled eroticism, sadistic violence, and bizarre decadence. Audiences were stunned, and so was the Catholic Church. The most infamous scene? A provocative milk bath sequence featuring sultry actress Claudette Colbert as the seductive Empress Papilla, lounging naked in a tub of ass's milk. Then came the arena scenes. Half-naked Christian women being torn apart by lions, and lesbian undertones that outraged censors across the country. Religious groups launched full-scale protests, picketed theaters, and demanded the film be pulled. It was banned in several states and counties, and church leaders warned moviegoers that watching it was a sin. The backlash was so intense, it helped pressure the studios into strictly enforcing the Hays Code just 2 years later, effectively silencing provocative content in Hollywood for the next 3 decades. Cecil B. DeMille's The Sign of the Cross didn't just stir controversy, it redefined the limits of what films could get away with. In trying to celebrate Christian martyrdom, DeMille ended up creating a film so sinful, it nearly baptized old Hollywood in censorship. And that's a wrap on today's deep dive into the forbidden side of film history. These weren't just movies, they were cinematic time bombs that rattled the foundations of old Hollywood. From censorship battles to full-blown bans, these films dared to challenge the system, and nearly brought it crashing down. If you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, hit that button now, because we've got even more untold Hollywood stories coming your way. Which banned films surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear which of these controversial classics left the biggest impact. Thanks for watching, and remember, at Globewise Entertainment, we don't just tell stories, we uncover the ones they tried to hide.